Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Tom Dark YouTube channel. I am your host, Tom Dark, and in today's video, I'm going to be talking about YouTube culture, internet culture a little bit. Going to be touching on something that I've been talking about with some people behind the scenes for a long time, and maybe on some streams a little bit on like Augie's stream or something. But basically, for like a year and a half now, I'd say that I've had this sentiment that I want to express. I'm going to outline my thoughts on it here in a digestible way, sort of a rant video, but there will be a little structure to it, and I think my points will make sense. And obviously, this will be in the Stories and Rants playlist. I just want to talk about the next wave of political content and my own predictions for it, how I think things are going to go, and yeah, all that. So about 7 or 8 years ago, Gamergate happened, alright? An event which has been talked about a lot. Believe it or not, in one of my college classes, I had an entire, like, two lectures about Gamergate and Anita Sarkeesian and the harassment that they face, if you can believe that. I was like sitting in class just basically being told about how Zoe Quinn was harassed by 4chan and Anonymous or whatever. I found it kind of funny. But that's how mainstream and pervasive this stuff is now, right? A lot of people who are not internet poisoned, people who are not in this weird internet world, know about Gamergate in some way and are aware of it. They know about some of the names involved, some of the key events, and while their perspective on it and the details may be warped because they hear about it from unreliable sources or people who weren't there, the movement undeniably got so big and mainstream that it was a very, very influential event for not just the internet, not just internet culture, but culture at large. And Gamergate was really the inception of the anti-SJW and skeptic community on YouTube. I talked about these guys a bit in the video I did about Candid. I talked about the inception of the community and the whole genre of content because it was important to the video when I was talking about them promoting this like fake free speech app that actually was like probably combing for data or something like that.
Like I'm on Twitter and it's like, yes, hello ma'am, would you like to talk about the Dark Lord patriarchy? He's all around us, keeping us down, holding us back. It's not because we don't work hard, but it's because of the patriarchy. If you don't believe in him, he's internalized inside of you. Join our cult and we'll save you today. Can I slam the door on these people? Can I virtually just slam the door?
One of the biggest communities on YouTube just a few years ago was the skeptic community, a pretty diverse group of individuals who all collected around a few main ideas which held them and their shared audience together. Channels like Sargon of Akkad blew up in the wake of Gamergate, a movement against identity politics in video games, which soon enough became a part of a greater wave of criticism against identity politics in academia, journalism, and social media platforms. The anti-social justice warrior wave of content exploded an entire genre of channels in tandem with Sargon, to the point where there were hundreds of people with dedicated audiences making content consistently for thousands of viewers. They criticized third-wave feminism, what they saw as forced diversity in different venues, and made fun of outrage culture for video after video, collaborative livestream after livestream. And while this movement was pretty selfless at first, eventually a lot of these people made YouTube their full-time job. Basically, the skeptics and the anti-SJWs were this whole massive community of people, and they were assembled from a few different political positions and viewpoints, but they united in response to what they saw as this like pink and blue-haired social justice warrior feminist culture that was existing in gaming communities and journalism circles across the world. It was a really diverse kind of scene, the anti-SJW scene. There were people of every race, people of every kind of background, but basically the reason that it existed and the reason they came together in the first place is because of a few key like tenets of their ideology, right? A few important beliefs, and this kind of loosely held them together for a few years, probably like 3 years, 4 years maybe. One of these things, a huge thing for them, was promoting freedom of speech. They wanted to allow people to speak as much as they wanted. They wanted freedom of speech to be a huge deal. And as a result, they were also anti-political correctness. Many of these creators were very edgy. They like to say a lot of edgy things, make edgy jokes, and that was a big part of the kind of culture of the community. And I would say another core belief was this anti-identity politics thing. That was probably above most others, right? They felt that identity politics and you know, conversations about race and sexism within media, particularly video games, hence the whole Gamergate thing, had really been a big deal, and they had a huge aversion to that. And this genre, this type of content, this community, absolutely fucking exploded on YouTube, with creators like Sargon of Akkad, Shoeonhead, Armored Skeptic, Chris Raygun. I mean, the list really goes on and on here. Some black guy. No, I'm not saying that in a racist way. His YouTube name is Some Black Guy. And even creators that have been more in like the atheism community and had been a little older, like TJ Kirk, right? He became a part of some of these circles for a little while and it really blew up as a result of shitting on feminists. Blair White is another name you probably recognize, and these guys really blew up massively. They had hundreds of thousands of loyal fans, people would be funneled between them, and there was just a huge community going on around this type of content and these beliefs being promoted on YouTube in videos. It was kind of framed as like a half comedy, half commentary thing, but also there was like an inherently political angle to it, right? A lot of channels in the commentary scene, which is more where I'm from on YouTube, right, also blew up off of making content in this realm. I'm Alex, Leafy, Chubbs, Brad Does Banter, all of those guys were making sort of anti-SJW and anti-feminist content back then, and it was very lucrative and it was very successful. There was a massive, massive market for all these guys to fit in and make this kind of content. A lot of people went after sites like BuzzFeed. There was a big anti-journalism kind of feeling within this community, which still exists to this day on YouTube, I'd say, to an extent, and I'd say is pretty justified. Even H3 back in the day was making content about these cringy, insane feminists and all that, right? This video is titled Crazy SJW Gets Triggered featuring Humongous, and is a very popular video on the H3 channel.
So how would you usually react if somebody just said their name was Humongous to you? Because for me, a normal reaction would be something like this. You know, a little exhale through the nose, not a full laugh, but just kind of like, you know, and then move on.
That's how you react to any dad joke.
But how does a social justice warrior react to Humongous? Well, the results may surprise you. Brace yourselves, guys.
This is shocking.
This will shock you.
It's humongous.
Okay. Humongous what? Humongous what?
Humongous.
Humongous what?
Humongous.
He's like, that's the joke. That's the whole joke. It's humongous. He's like, did she not get it? Humongous. Humongous. That's the joke. I'm a dad. Look at me. I got the slick back. I've got receding hairline, guys. I'm a dad. Do you not get the memo?
Humongous what?
Humongous.
Humongous what?
That's what it is.
Humongous what? Is that sexual harassment?
No, it's humongous.
Then why did you say that to
That's
me?
my name.
What? Humongous what?
Humongous what?
Humongous what?
When dad jokes get too real.
This was a whole area of the internet, a whole genre of content that infected everything. It was fucking huge. Absolutely massive. Anyone could do it and make money for a time. And Anita Sarkeesian herself was so hated that a lot of commentary channels shit on her, even when she did basically like nothing wrong in certain situations. I'd say, you know, I definitely don't like her or agree with a lot of what she said, but even in situations where she didn't do anything wrong, you could call her out and you would get a lot of views, you'd get some money from it, and it would be a nice bag for you, right? This video from I'm Alex is titled Boogie Was Bullied by Anita Sarkeesian. If you can believe it, back then people were still on the Boogie defense train. That was still very hot.
Go on a jog.
I can't even ask a damn question. It's not only women that get harassed.
And then she's doing a panel with Boogie. Boogie, I think we all know, is one of the nicest guys who there is on the entire of the website. There's not really a guy nicer than him. And there's not really a guy who's more willing to listen than him. So when I see a video from Boogie tonight at 8 where he seems to be shaking and he's scared of Anita Sarkeesian, because that's the nicest way I could put it, I'm starting to think, do you know what, maybe she's not the one being harassed. Maybe she's making other people feel uncomfortable.
This stuff got so mainstream that Sargon of Akkad got on the biggest podcast in the world, Joe Rogan, while wearing a Kekistan shirt. I think I've mentioned this in other like videos before or something, but just imagine like that. Imagine that happening now. Like, I don't know. The fact that a Kekistan shirt was on Joe Rogan is truly amazing.
You guys, I've been dealing with some people who are fucking idiots.
I get it.
You know, and I've had to be like really, really specific, because there is a group of people online who know that I'm right. And they don't like that I'm right.
They don't like you're right?
Oh, no. They hate that I'm right.
Are we talking about Anita Sarkeesian again?
Her fans, they hate me. And I don't want to give them any more ammunition than necessary.
I feel bad that she's not defending herself, or
she
doesn't have the opportunity to.
When she called me a piece of shit and a garbage human, I had said nothing up until that point, so I just yelled back, I just want to talk. And she was like, oh, whatever, dude. And it's just like, I came all this way to hear what you had to say, and all you could do is insult me. That
Well,
was
that is
the
an
one
ego.
interaction you had.
But all things, good and bad, must come to an end. Eventually, the anti-SJW movement became populated by a lot more explicitly right-wing figures. People like Lauren Southern, people who were, definitely more right-wing. I know a lot of people thought she was kind of like a white nationalist back then. Even the full-on alt-right to an extent, and like the explicitly far-right really began to funnel into the community and kind of populate it. And things did not really work out for a lot of these guys once the TRS influence and all that stuff kind of started to flood in. There were some massive community blowing up dramas once people realized that they had a big ideological rift, like what happened with Kraut and T back in the day with allegations around some kind of doxing Discord server, which I believe were largely exaggerated, but yeah, that happened.
War has changed.
No. You kill your enemies, and then you make peace with what is left.
It's no longer about nations, ideologies, or ethnicity.
Fuck you, Frenchman.
It's an endless series of proxy battles fought by mercenaries and machines. War and its consumption of life has become a well-oiled machine.
Jesus, we should have gassed all of them.
War has changed.
If we've learned one thing from the Greeks, it's this, that all great tragedies involve a woman. And our story's Helen of Troy would be rage after storm.
And eventually, what was known as the skeptic community kind of began to fall apart, right? It began to wither. The ability for people to make insane money off of all this stuff slowly but surely faded away. Chris Reagan kind of stopped posting videos about this stuff. Blair White moved into a more explicitly right-wing direction. Sargon got hired as the CEO of Applebee's. Everything just fell apart. But with that transition, you kind of see a lot of people moving in different directions. For example, Shoe on Head, she stopped being more of an anti-SJW, and she claimed that, she realized she's actually like a leftist, right? She's actually left-wing, she's a liberal. Actually, what does she call herself? Like a libertarian socialist? Is that a real political ideology? I don't really know what that is, but okay. So she kind of moved in that direction, and this was just as breadtube was really starting to pick up. Breadtube was formed as a direct response to the anti-SJWs, the skeptics, and the alt-right. They were explicitly far left, they were socialist and communist and discussed a lot of those ideas in their videos. They were very progressive on LGBT issues, and things really took off for them to the point that if you were to be in that community and you made a specific type of content and got in at the right time, much like with the skeptics, you could have a considerable living, right? If you just said the right things. The ability to grift became available. And I'm not saying all these people are grifters, but some of them undoubtedly are, right? Like that's just gonna happen in any movement. Much like any community, breadtube was also populated with a lot of very talented people who genuinely, make decent videos, make good videos, are entertaining, and beyond that, have good rhetoric and manage to be on a mainstream scale. I mean, it's truly impressive how massive ContraPoints has managed to be with the kind of videos that she makes. But also, it's home to a lot of shitlords and losers and grifters who don't live up to their own ideals. Breadtube kind of hit its peak in relevancy, I'd say around 2019 or so, maybe late 2019, early 2020. And from there, much like what happened with the skeptics, some infighting and some massive debauchery, and honestly some general hypocrisy from some of these channels kind of stretched the fabrics a bit to the point that they began to wear. Honestly, I'd go as far as to say that Destiny did a decent amount of damage to leftist communities online, all on his lonesome. He managed to put a bit of a hole in it. I know he's talked about that a lot on his streams. So much like what happened with the skeptics, the breadtube community kind of began to wear. The fabric began to get weaker and the connections weakened to the point that breadtube is not, nearly what it once was today. It is very much a shadow, a faded shadow. Today it still exists to an extent, but, ContraPoints is like distance herself from the community a bit, and many people involved are not really in the same position that they once were. It became obvious over time that some of these guys are okay with justifying a lot of fucked up shit and are not consistent on their positions and are okay with lying or spreading misinformation when it became politically convenient. It became clear that a lot of their fans are like actual crazy people. So right now, where does that leave us? Well, I believe that we're basically at sort of a juncture and a crossroads on YouTube. A time of yet another great transition. Breadtube was way bigger than the skeptics ever could have dreamed of being, and they were truly mainstream on a level that I think that the skeptics couldn't do for a few reasons. Firstly, I think YouTube has grown a lot since then. There's a lot more people on it than ever in general. And also, I think because Breadtube also had, some academia involved, and they had people on more of a mainstream scale. They appealed to a lot of millennials and people who had money to spare with like Patreon and stuff like that. I think that breadtube managed to become mainstream in a way that frankly the skeptics just never could, because the skeptics were edgy, and a lot of people will just shy away from that once it gets to a mainstream scale. I also think that a big part of it is that YouTube was smaller back then. I don't think a lot of people talk about this, but the amount of people on YouTube between 2016 and now has changed quite a bit. Like, actually quite a bit. There's a lot more people on YouTube now, and it's a much more mainstream platform than it was even then. People used to talk about this in 2016, like, oh, YouTube's becoming so mainstream because, people back in 2011, contrasting with 2016, it was a big change. But between 2016 and now, I'd say it's even a bigger change. People like Contra are still legitimately mainstream figures, but breadtube as a whole, its potential, its momentum, that star power is definitely fading. It's really going away. And I basically believe that the next big wave is underway. I won't claim to be a scientist with this stuff or an expert, but just from what I've observed, I'm sure that the window is about to shift again. And this has really ignited in me, this video being made that I wanted to make for a while was really ignited by what happened on Twitter the other day that I covered in yesterday's video, right? Just when I thought the debate was over, the war began. Hassan's Twitch ban ignited a discussion around one certain word. A word imbued with ancient mysticism and power. Cracker! Perhaps the most powerful slur one can use against a white man. Be gone, cracker! I did a video about it, and I voiced my opinion on the whole Hassan debate, and everything was fine on YouTube, right? Everything was totally okay. But it would be on Twitter that this debate turned into an all-out war. Cracker is a racial slur. 514 quote tweets and counting, and the whole debate around the word cracker. I've been thinking about it a lot, and honestly, I think that, that entire sort of thing solidified my opinion of everything that has happened with the cracker discourse, and the fact that people are straight up not willing to acknowledge the facts of the situation, and that's really infuriating for me personally, and it's kind of insane. But kind of taking a step back and looking more big picture, I think that these people, the type of insane people that went after me on Twitter, and I'm not saying this to like play the victim because I'm not a victim, right? It's not that big of a deal. In fact, it made for a pretty good video. But, I'm not a victim or anything like that, but I think that people who do feel victimized by these people, and people who have a greater issue and more of an investment in politics, will see this and realize that there is kind of a cancer online right now, and that's going to be something they're going to want to get rid of. I firmly believe that people like this are unintentionally going to cause the next wave of anti-SJW to even more far-right content online. And just to further outline this and my feelings on it, I want to take you guys back to 2015 again, alright? One of the most commonly used terms back then was snowflake. It was a term for people who they saw as sensitive. The whole facts don't care about your feelings meme. We all know the Shapiro quote. Meme it all you want, meme him all you want, criticize him all you want. But that quote is so widespread that now everyone knows it basically. Like everyone in my graduating class of high school kind of knew who Ben Shapiro was, at least to an extent, and knew that quote, facts don't care about your feelings. And there was this impression and belief back in 2015 that swaths of people were fueled by emotions and were coming from a place of radical politics that was unwilling to accept the truth, living in an echo chamber, basically just insane people fueled by emotions that don't accept any facts. And that's where that saying came from. That's why Ben Shapiro's saying became so mainstream. Not necessarily because he was right, but because a lot of people really resonated with that message. It really touched a lot of people, okay, in their hearts. And so where are we now years later? 6-7 years later, right? It's almost 2022. And where are we? After so much change, what is on the horizon right now? What are we hearing so much about? Cancel culture, right? The cancel culture meme is so big that everyone is making videos about it. It's left Twitter at this point, all right? It's left Reddit. My fucking dad in his 40s knows about what cancel culture is. Not in the same way we do, but he has a grasp of it, right? He knows the term. It's a household name. There is an entire market for blowing up on YouTube just for shitting on insane pushers of cancel culture, Minecraft and K-pop stans, crazy vegans, right? Remember that from years ago? That came back. This is a real thing that you can make videos about and get like hundreds of thousands of views. And now, what you have is a massive Twitch celebrity, being Hassan Piker, appearing openly racist to white people to the point that he was banned and has attracted the attention of the mainstream. Things are churning, things are shifting, and there is an energy on the internet right now that I think is palpable and you can really feel it. I certainly feel it. And so basically, you know, my theory, my prophecy is that the next anti-SJW wave is on the way. It probably won't be populated by most of the same figures that it was years ago. It will be a completely new crop of people, but I think it is coming, and I think that there will be another kind of right-wing push online on YouTube. Just the other week, I was recommended this YouTube channel on my recommended page on YouTube, right? And it was called Think Before You Sleep. This channel is kind of an amalgamation of like 2014, 2015 anti-feminist YouTube combined with talking about modern day beliefs around fat acceptance and fat culture and woke culture and cancel culture. This dude talks about why men aren't getting married, and he also talks about, you know, fat acceptance and things like that. He talks about woke comedians, right? That was something that is really coming back. And this channel is doing very well right now. Like, for something that feels partially dated, it's doing so fucking well in terms of the algorithm, in terms of analytics. And look at these videos.
In this video, allow me to play internet historian and remind you all of the feminist YouTuber Lacey Green. Back from 2008, probably earlier. I mean, she's been on YouTube so long that her old videos are in standard definition. But do you remember when Lacey was all about the cause, the wage gap, and all the feminist stuff? She was one of the major young faces of feminism, but all of that changed in 2017 when feminists turned on her and threw her under the bus. Why did they do that? Partly because Lacey released this video here called Taking the Red Pill. This is the material that feminists found so hateful.
I went down the rabbit hole of anti-SJW videos, and I found that some are pretty disrespectful. But that's not all the channels. I've recently found anti-SJW channels that are well-cited and reasoned, you know, make some interesting points. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, I agree with that, or I didn't really think of that. And sometimes I disagree, in which case, you know, I still...
Like, okay, so you just watched that. Look at this next video right here.
To the transgender community, I am more than willing to give you an audience, but I have some conditions. You must admit that Hannah Gatsby is not funny.
That is a dog made entirely out of crayons. I don't need that.
Ha ha ha. Wasn't that funny? Gee, if she didn't constantly reassure me that she's a good comedian, I might have forgotten to laugh there.
Between Dave Chappelle's attempted cancellation and all these freaks on Twitter and Hassan Piker and breadtube, I think in 5 years we will be looking back at these events and be like, wow, truly a sign of the times. The Dave Chappelle thing in particular and the conversation that sparked that was truly incredible, and really I think it caused a lot of people to show their hand. People trying to beat the shit out of Vito and Dick Masterson probably didn't help either.
In the closer, Chappelle declares that he's joining rallying in Team TERF, the acronym for Trans Exclusionary Radical Feminists, and conflated rapper DaBaby's homophobic statements as a show over the summer with systemic racism. In our country, you can shoot and kill it, but you better not hurt a gay person's feelings, Chappelle says on stage. More bluntly declared herself done. The brewing backlash is ample, but perhaps most shocking is the reaction from one of Netflix's own, Jacqueline Moore, executive producer and showrunner of the streaming giants Dear White People.
Fact, this is a fact. Every human being in this room, every human being on Earth, had to pass through the legs of a woman to be on Earth.
Critics characterizing the remarks as transphobic.
Moore bluntly declared herself done with Netflix. Number 4, Moore's reaction. Moore took to Twitter to make her feelings clear on this matter. She did not hold back on what she was feeling after what Chappelle said.
So, yeah, the next wave is coming. Whether you like it or not, this is inevitable. Every push gets a pull. The only question is how hard the pull will be this time. Will it be anti-SJWs? Will it be full-on conservatives that are the next wave? Is it going to be another mix of the two? I don't know. I can't say, but yeah, it's definitely fucking coming. So yeah, that's the prophecy I have for the internet. It's on the way. If you guys liked the video, then be sure to leave a like on it. If you disliked it, leave a dislike on the video right fucking now. Do it. And be sure to leave your thoughts in the comments section below. It's always good to hear what you guys have to say about all this stuff. I'll see you on the next one. Bye.